Today, we are going to be doing NFL record predictions for every single team in the NFL for 2024. As you can see on your screen, there's the 2024 NFL schedule grid. Shout out Sharp Football Analysis. We're going to start out with the AFC, move into the NFC. I'll put the link in the description if you want to do your own record predictions. I believe it is called Playoff Predictors, the website, and it's very useful. It is a lot harder than you think. We did this last year. When there's bad teams, it is really hard to get them wins sometimes. So I did it a couple times. I know Dobbs did it a couple times to just try to get something that seemed more realistic. But let's get right into it, Dobbs. Let's start out in the AFC East with the Buffalo Bills. A lot of people are down on the Bills this year because of the fact that they lost their number one weapon in Stephon Diggs. They ended up making a lot of cuts, but I think they did a good job setting themselves up for the future and kind of restructuring this team into the new generation championship contenders that the Buffalo Bills are going to be either this year or the coming years.
No, absolutely, Hunter. And so I had the Bills. Hold on. Let me just preface, like you already basically prefaced this, but before, you can already hear the comments. Fan bases. This is just across every fan base. This is so hard to do. Like, no commenting allowed until you go try to do this yourself, because you're going to see, you have all these ideas in your head of how things are going to go. And then when you get to actually typing it out, doing it game by game, and then each game has an immediate result on the other, you realize how quickly it is, or how hard it is quickly to get these teams where you thought they were going to be. I mean, when you see the schedule in front of you, it's not the same anymore. You got to give some teams a little bit of leeway. It's tough. Doing this is not easy. And by no means is this a guarantee or this is what's going to happen. When you put it out on paper, though, this is what, for me and Hunter, ended up happening.
And what's crazy, Dobbs, to kind of go off that is, for example, we'll get to the Titans, but when you're working on the Titans' early year schedule, you're like, oh my God, this is bad. They get their wins in the back half of the schedule, just from like what I was doing. And it's like, you'll have a team, not the Titans, but just in general, start like 1-5, and you're like, oh God, like this is not right. But it's tough. It's really tough. So go ahead. What were you saying?
No, I was just going to say, basically, no, like you just basically finished, like that's the whole point. The reality is this, look, this is just us with the matchups on paper, making a decision on the spot. But as we know too, Hunter, look, injuries happen. Superstars rise out of nowhere. Superstars fall out of nowhere. This is just with the information that we have present preseason. So many things change during the course of the season. Realistically, is this going to be a blueprint for really how the season's going to go? Probably not. But if it is, hey, you know what? Crystal ball us. This is our best effort. And if anything, it's just to create good discourse, some good, good fun discourse. So don't get to hating if your team isn't, number one. It's very hard. Trust me. We're going to leave the link in the description. Go do it yourself if you have any hate comments. You're going to see real quick how hard it is to make every team round out the way you want. But without further ado, let's get right into it, Hunter. And we're starting with the Buffalo Bills. And so what I got to say about the Bills, I'm sorry, Bills fans. It goes right along with what I just said, I got you guys narrowly missing out on the playoffs. I got them finishing here 9-8, second in the division, however. So it goes to show you, a little spoiler alert here, I guess. We only got one team, I won't say who yet, that's making the playoffs out of the AFC East for me personally. So, the AFC East, as far as my simming went, not anything, it wasn't greener pastures over here. But the reality is this, like you said already, the Bills, as much as I still expect Josh Allen to have a fantastic season, and I still think that this is a good team, right? You are, to an extent, starting over a little bit, right? Like right now, okay. And it's very interesting, just little tidbits, but a couple years ago with what happened to Damar Hamlin, right? We would have been shocked even, right? And it's amazing. It's awesome that he's playing again. Damar Hamlin is now the starting safety. So you can see, at least on the depth chart as of today, don't sue me if that's not how the season starts. But the bottom line is the Bills, and it's not just Damar Hamlin as an example. We could take much more than one example. We could take how the linebacking core is aging and there's new pieces coming in. We can talk about how the D line is starting to lose guys and new young guys are arising. The DB room is not at all the same as it was a couple years ago. All in all, right? And this O-line, I still have a lot of faith in. But the receiving corps this year, I just don't know. I don't know. And again, it's not the end all be all. The Bills totally could still make the playoffs. But just in this simulation, the way I had things going, I had them roughly just missing the playoffs too. And last thing I want to say that I forgot to include in the whole spiel, whenever I'm doing in divisional games, and I think it was the same for you, Hunter, I'm splitting them no matter what, no matter how big the difference of the quality of teams are, because it just seems like with divisional games, you never know how it goes. So I always split it. Whoever the home team was in that divisional game, I gave it to, right? So I just wanted to also include that.
So I had the Bills making the playoffs at 10-7. I think this is one of the teams that may struggle early, but will kind of find their win later on, just because of the fact of, I think the quarterback factor. I think Josh Allen has you good for about 10 wins, and I don't hate their wide receiver room. Their O-line is decent. I think James Cook can take another step, and I'm not, their defense won't be bad. Like, Sean McDermott will make sure that defense is functional. But I think that's where you're really going to see the weaker side of the ball. I think maybe the Stephon Diggs effect may be a little bit overblown, because you look at the wide receiver room and you have Keon Coleman as your number one technically, and you have Curtis Samuel in there as well, Khalil Shakir. But a lot of people forget about Dalton Kincaid because he is a tight end. Like, he's more of a weapon, similar to how Brock Bowers is being considered a weapon for the Raiders. So if you look at the Buffalo Bills schedule, and I'm not going to name it out, but, you have Arizona, right? You have Tennessee on there. You have Seattle, and Seattle's not a pushover. And you have New England twice. So those alone should get you to about 5-6 games. And then you're talking about, beating teams like Jacksonville, beating teams like Tennessee, beating teams like the Rams and the Lions. Like, the Rams are one of those teams where it's like they could have a really good season. They could also have a pretty rough season. And I don't want to say pretty rough season. I would lean more on them being a stronger competitor this year because of all the additions they've made. But it's like those are more split games, if you know what I'm talking about. And they're not going to be pushovers when they play San Francisco or when they play Kansas City. Like, they could very easily beat Kansas City. We know Kansas City, even though Kansas City is later in the year, I believe it is week 11. Kansas City doesn't necessarily always turn it on till the last couple weeks. Like, they usually will struggle earlier in the year. Week 11 is a little bit more midseason. But with all that being said, I think it's safe to say that the Buffalo Bills are not going to be pushovers this year. I think they still remain competitive. I still think they find a way into the playoffs. In mine, I have them winning the division, but they have the same record as another team in the division. It's just based off division record. So they very well could not win the division and still make the playoffs. But with that being said, yeah, I mean, I think the Buffalo Bills are a little over. I think I've come around to them personally. I think they're a little overhated this year. I think they can be a playoff team and maybe win a playoff game. I don't know how much deeper they'd go than that, but I think anything's possible with Josh Allen.
No, yeah, and I just want to, last thing while we're still on the Bills, I want to be crystal clear, Bills fans. Do I still think that the Bills can make the playoffs? Absolutely. It just didn't come out that way on this schedule simulation. I mean, that's really the bottom line. But the Bills are definitely still right there with a couple of these other teams that I have at the bottom of the teams that ended up making the playoffs, which we'll get to in just a little bit here. So stay tuned.
All right, let's move in to our next team, the Miami Dolphins. Where did you have them?
Dolphins fans might have been getting hopeful when I said there was one more team in the AFC East that was going to be taking a playoff spot home. And unfortunately, I'm sorry, Dolphins fans, it's not you guys. I had the Dolphins finishing out at 9-8, right? And going 3-3 in divisional play. Like, as I said, I crystal clear. I split division play based off who's home and who's away. It makes it much easier for this because one way or another, usually it kind of gets split, whatever. Some team's going to take it that wasn't supposed to take it. You kind of just use that divisional game split as kind of your, I don't know when a team is going to lose the game, but they're going to lose one that they shouldn't lose eventually kind of thing.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it.
It's like, so I had the Dolphins at 9-8. Let's just evaluate the Dolphins from the perspective of realistically, there's areas of this team that are amazing, but there's also areas where I don't necessarily know what to expect. And I think that the not knowing what to expect is the biggest thing this year. there's a lot of like, I don't know what I'm trying to think the right word here. There's a lot of like caveats to this season that I feel like maybe not a lot of people have like considered. And it's very interesting. Like, let's just start with, okay, right? The O-line replacements for one. So, the Dolphins O-line, as we knew and know, notoriously a couple years ago was like, this unit's the worst unit in the league. If they don't do something soon, Tua is going to be right in the hospital for a long time. And he's not going to be able to be an NFL quarterback. He's like, that was kind of the narrative, right? Well, they kind of not kind of. They really turned it around. They really got things going. And then you lose two important pieces of your O-line. Can these replacements, namely in this case, Isaiah Wynn, who again, the tackle guard versatility, but a little shaky on the inside. And then also, right, we just moving Robert Jones, right? Okay. But and then also Aaron Brewer as well. So the reality, I think, at this point for the Dolphins is like, look, the offense, the receiving core is amazing. I'm a little shaky on the O-line, but then to the defense is where things get really just the most confusing is because, right, whenever you have a new defensive coordinator coming in, I think we can all agree it's just you never know what to expect, right? Like we're either going to make a jump or a regression. Very, very rarely is it going to just be kind of like middling out how you were. And it's just, I don't know, like you lost a legend last year. And if you're going from a legend to, and again, this isn't anything against the new defensive coordinator. It's just when you're going from Vic, I'm going to say like the easiest way to say it is if Vic didn't work, then it's just hard for me to believe anyone. I don't, and that might be completely unfair. I know there's a lot of rumors how Vic and this team just weren't meshing, but I think the biggest thing for me is just that I don't know how to feel about this defense. I think there's enough question marks, especially with the pass rushing injuries. Like the defense to me is just too much of a question mark on top of the fact that now, again, this is more of a long-term thing, but Tua taking up all that salary cap, Hunter, long-term, as we talked about, the future of this team, I don't even know what to expect. It's kind of puts them in a rough position because if you're the Dolphins, you kind of do got to strike now while the iron's hot and you have all these amazing offensive weapons. But then the other side of things, do you have enough firepower on defense? I'm not sure they do.
What record did you have for them? Just so I could put it in. You had 9-8?
Yeah, 9-8.
That's what I had as well. And I want to point something out here. So this is from Colin Coward. So take it with a grain of salt. But the stats are the stats. Tua under 50 degrees is 1-7, 9 touchdowns, and 12 interceptions. In the back half of their season, I'm going to go from week 12 out, which is, I believe, November 21st. It should be around there, right? They play at Green Bay, at Cleveland, at New York Jets. Those are not easy games, and those are cold environments. And if you even want to go into week like 9 and 10, they play at LA, so not bad. But before that, they play at Buffalo. So that's 4 games right there that may be under 50 degrees. And we saw how much Tua struggled in that game. I mean, listen, anybody would struggle in that Kansas City game, but the Chiefs didn't struggle as much as the Miami Dolphins did. And the reality is, the Dolphins, I saw this on Twitter, so I'm not stealing it. I forget who said it, but they're like a convertible. They work great in the summer, but when it gets to the back half of the season, we see them struggle. They could very well be 9-4 up until that point, and then lose 4 games just because of the weather. So I do like the Dolphins and what they've done on offense, but I think we all have opinions when the offseason starts, Dobbs. And I think it's almost the team's job to change. I think it's a team's job to change your opinion with the moves they make through free agency, through the draft, through just decisions that happen in the offseason. I don't know if the Dolphins got better. I don't know if they got better. And that is my main problem with them. I don't know if they got better.
You know what I want to add to that, Hunter? Because that was basically, we're on the same wavelength right now. And here to me is like far and away the biggest issue with the Dolphins. And we talked about this last year, but it's still just as relevant today. I think the Dolphins are one of those teams that, yes, they're a contender, but they're a very top heavy contender. Now, like, what do I mean by that? I mean, if you have one or two guys injured that are playmakers on this team, they go from being contender to pretender very quickly. Like, just realistically, I mean, come on, guys. If we take Tyreek Hill out of the game and it's a playoff game, if we take Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle, do it. I mean, we've seen it. That's actually, and that's a possible thing to happen during the course of the season. And if Tua is not, and that's every team, you can say a certain quarterback, but we've seen, right. And thankfully last year wasn't a repeat, but we've seen that Tua's had issues staying healthy in the past, and hopefully that never happens again. But the bottom line is this team is very top heavy on Tua, the receiving core, and Mike McDaniel working together and just balling out on teams, like you said, in the early parts of the year when the weather's good. When that's not happening, what is this team's identity? And I think that's something that people need to consider. Yes, they're a good running team. They have a great running back committee that balances out well with this receiving core. But when the weather, like we just said, when it's January and February and the games really matter, are they still playing the same football? As of right now, objectively, no. And it's up to them to change our minds. That's all there is to it at this point. I mean, we've seen the same thing. Now it's up to them to change our narrative.
All right, let's move in to the New England Patriots. I had them at 3-14. When you guys do this, yeah, ooh is right. I think they have the worst record out of all the teams. I could be wrong though. No, I think they're tied with another team. But when you guys look at their schedule, realistically, where do you see the wins? At Tennessee, versus Indianapolis, at Arizona. Like, every team they play, I could eat. Listen, they're not going to go 0-17. They won't. They have a pretty good defense. They're not pushovers. But I really, really, really struggle with that offense. And I don't know if I trust the coaching staff. The things about Drake May have not been all that positive coming out of training camp. I've heard a lot about the issues on the offensive line. First-year coaching staff. Jacoby Brissett's going to be starting. Got rookie receivers pretty much out there. The O-line is a question mark. You know what? The defense isn't as good as the Jets, but it damn near reminds me of the Jets with Zach Wilson.
I swear to you, you literally just took the first thing I was going to say straight out of my mouth. Like that, and that's the thing. So Patriots fans, let's be clear and up front. This defense rocks shit. They hold down the boat. They do their job. This is not. If you're a Patriots fan and you love the defense, then don't leave a hate comment. It has nothing to do. It has nothing to do with the defense. This has everything to do with the fact that, just like Hunter just said, we have seen, and the Jets aren't the only example, right? We can pull out other ones. When a team is too defensively top heavy, the offense doesn't hold up their end of the bargain. It's just realistically only a matter of time before that defense not only takes their foot off the gas, but it's just once the defense takes their foot off the gas, you basically are losing a chance to win 9 out of 10 games. And that's exactly where the Patriots are at. When the Patriots are going to win games this year, it's going to be because the defense played a hell of a game and the offense did just enough. And you look back and you're like, all right, and we love to say complimentary football. They will be complimentary football games. And to the Patriots' credit, could they pull out one where they really surprise us and Jacoby Brissett throws a couple, crazy and runs it in once and the Patriots put up 35 points? It's possible, yes. But is it going to be something we're going to see more than once or twice this season? No. And so that's the bottom line, is that this is a incredibly defensively heavy team. They have a good defense, but then, when you include in that, you have to throw this caveat in also, which is also part of the problem with the Patriots, is that a lot of the good defenders on this team, again, I did not say all Patriots fans don't, not all, but a fair number of them are starting to get a little older. You have to start thinking about who you're going to replace with. But then, yes, also you do have still good young defenders, right? I'm not just going to ignore the Christian Gonzalez's, the Christian Barmores.
But is
Patriots,
Christian Barmore going to be playing this year?
Well,
the blood cuts are an issue.
And I'm going to throw out Christian Gonzalez too, right? Everybody always thinks that just because someone's good at football, they get injured, they're going to come back and be the same great football player. It's not always how things work, right? Because injuries are a real thing that your body has to work through. Everybody always just thinks it's like a video game. And, he's out for 4 weeks. He's going to come back and it's the same. Guys, and again, I hope Christian Gonzalez comes back the same. I hope Barmore comes back the same. But when you're coming back from serious injuries, you never know what to expect. So that's just another thing we can throw on the table right there for the young guys. But bottom line, defense is going to carry this team. I don't think we're going to see Drake made this year. I hope we don't for his development. We'll probably see a Jacoby Brissett year. And really, what else is there to say? Just defensive heavy team. It's going to be pretty much very similar to last year. And hopefully for Patriots fans, Drake can make a huge sophomore jump.
Where did you have their record?
I had him at 4-12 or 4-13. So we were really close.
Yep. 4-13. So really just one win off. So safe to say you don't have them making the playoffs.
Yeah, safe to say there is a incredibly slim chance of that happening.
All right, let's move on to our last team in the AFC East. We have the New York Jets. I have them at 10-7. I have them making the playoffs. This is a team that last year we, on paper at the beginning of the year, I think both picked to make the Super Bowl. And,
I remember that day.
Yeah, and then Aaron Rodgers went down and screwed the pooch. So I think the biggest thing, Dobbs, that I kept in mind when making this decision to put them at 10-7 is honestly, I had them originally finishing a couple games higher, maybe like 11-6, 12-5 type area. And then I remembered this team is unproven. They have not. I'm trying to think, but it's been a while since this team has even touched 10 wins. Am I wrong? So I'm pulling up the stats now.
Do some math in my head.
The last time they had 10 wins was 2015. So it's like, how am I going to put them at 11-6? How am I going to put them at 12-5 when they haven't proved it? They haven't been able to get over the 7-win hump since 2015, like when they had 10 wins. So I guess all of that to say is the Jets could very well have more than 10 wins this year. But until I'm able to see it on paper with this team, I mean, Aaron Rodgers is old. He's coming off an Achilles tear. Like Mike Williams, who's their wide receiver too, they very well could go trade for Devontae Adams at the deadline. That may be a real possibility. But Mike Williams, until we see he can stay healthy, I really like what they did with the offensive line. If they can stay healthy, I think the Hassan Reddick debacle is kind of ridiculous. That might be one of the biggest fumbles if he does not sign the extension, to give away a conditional second-round pick for a guy or a conditional third that can turn into a second. It's just kind of ridiculous. But with that being said, I mean, the Jets open up at San Fran, but then they get Tennessee, New England, and Denver, and then Minnesota. So they could very easily start the season 4-1, 5-0 if they beat San Francisco. And, their schedule really isn't all that hard. I mean, they end up they obviously play New England twice. They play in Indianapolis. They play Arizona. They play Seattle. The Jacksonville, I was always 50-50 on who's winning versus Jacksonville because they're always, a shot in the dark. You don't know what you're going to get out of them from week to week. So all that to say, the Jets have a favorable schedule and a very, very good team. But I need to see them do it on paper first. And is this going to be a situation where, I don't know. It's really hard because Aaron Rodgers is the whole offense. If Aaron Rodgers is not there, this team does not go anywhere. So it really rides on a 39-year-old guy coming off a torn Achilles. It's very, very, very risky.
No, well, 100%. I think, and every Jets fan would agree that right now, and let me just open by saying, if everything goes perfect, right, as we said last year, nothing's changed. This team, Jets fans, is still a team that can go win the Super Bowl. Me and Hunter both are on that train. There's nothing that would stop us from saying that the Jets are a Super Bowl capable roster. But that's the difference, right? Is that we haven't seen them come out and do it on the field like some of these other teams that I'm willing to say are Super Bowl contenders also. So the Jets are a little bit different. Let me just say this right off the bat so I don't confuse anyone. I have them also at 10-7, right? So we were thinking the same thing. Where I could have given them more wins, even on
they made the playoffs, right?
Wait, what was that?
Do you have them making the playoffs?
Yeah, they were the one team. They were the team that won the division, make the playoffs out of the AFC East. But so my thing was just, look, I don't want to give them first run through. I had them at 12, 13 wins. And I'm like, same thing you're saying. There's too much. And even I think this is the biggest thing. And I think Jets fans even they're not going to want to hear this, but they're going to understand where I'm coming from. even if it's not something catastrophic again, it doesn't have to be. I think what's much more likely than something like that happening is something like this, where, 3-4 weeks into the season, 5 weeks into the season, A-Rod's telling the staff, hey, maybe this week I need to heal up a little bit. Like maybe we gotta, I don't want to go back out there and risk something bad. And then plays good again. Week 12 comes around. Hey, maybe I need this week off, and maybe it's best because I'm getting much older and I'm coming off a super serious injury. And we've already seen that there's been a few things, lingering already that we saw early in camp and stuff. So I think it's something much more likely like that, where maybe he's just missing a week here and there due to soreness, whatever, playing it precautious for the playoffs. That to me is the biggest thing, Hunter. I don't think it's going to be like anything catastrophic. Much more just the Jets have already showed us some of their star players are a little injury prone here and there, miss a week here, miss a week there. I think it's just stuff like that adding up that I would expect much more than something catastrophic. But I do think something like that is, I don't want to use the term likely for something like that, but it's definitely not unlikely either. It's kind of in the 50-50 range. So when something like that's on the table, to your point, I just couldn't really push him over the edge and make him the best team or one of the top teams in the AFC.
One last note I want to say about the Jets is I do get concerned with the fact of if everything is not going as planned, they seem like a team that a lot of dysfunction can happen, right? Like we already see it. Like, is the Hassan Reddick issue an omen for the year? Like, really, is it? Like, we saw what happened last year with Zach Wilson and, the general feeling about Nathaniel Hackett, and then the thing comes out about Saleh, like I don't want to call it a hit piece, but it was just like a look into the Aaron Rodgers situation with Zach Wilson and Robert Saleh, and things have not been run well for the New York Jets in the last couple years, and nothing changed with the Hassan Reddick trade so far. So why am I expecting that if things don't go right, that this isn't going to blow up in their face?
Before we move on from the Jets, the last thing I have to say, because I don't know how I glazed over it. No, that's the biggest problem is with a lot of other teams. Like, let's say the Jets had a really good coach. If the Jets had because that's the difference is that Robert Saleh hasn't proved like we'll use Dable, for example. Okay. Like let's compare Dable and Saleh. Similar results generally, right? Minus the one playoff anomalies here. But that's the point is that Dable showed us that even when shit's not rocking his way and really they have no business being able to be a competitive team, this team will still find a way to be competitive. Versus with Saleh, when they had every business to still be or every right to still be competitive and already right, that's how this team was set up. They weren't, and they fall apart. That's really what makes it so hard to put a lot of faith into this team is that, to your point, like you're saying, Hunter, it's not like, oh, we're just relying on Rodgers and he's our main guy when he's on the field. It's almost like we don't really have much faith in the coaching staff either. Like A-Rod, you're damn near the head coach and the star player. Like Jets fans need A-Rod out there for everything, right? Calling offense, doing everything. So that's the final caveat that makes it so hard to put a bundle of faith into the Jets.
All right. Well, we both have the Jets making the playoffs. I also have the Bills. At the end of each conference, I'll just flash the playoff teams on the screen so we can all know. Moving